All right, we are live. Today is Thursday, August 26th, and this is our fortnightly design-focused meeting. Before we get to the agenda, let's each go around and introduce yourselves. If you could say what your name is, where you're from, and if you have something exciting to share with the group, that would be great. I am Jen Lampton, joining from Oakland, California. I am so excited about all of the activity in the issue queue this week. Everybody seems to be going pedal to the metal on usability issues, user interface improvements that might not be usability focused, but just making things consistent, making things better. It's my favorite thing about Backdrop is how much all of that stuff gets improved. So I'm really excited to work on that stuff this week. Greg.
Hi, I'm Greg. I'm joining from Greece and also excited about the feature freeze coming up and working on all the, excuse the dog, sorry. I have a barking dog at the background. Yeah, so I've been one of the people being really active in the queue after being in a hiatus for a month and a half. Really excited, hope to get most of the things that are really close in, and let's go to Tim.
Hi, I'm Tim, St. Paul Tim. I'm in Deerwood, Minnesota. I have also sort of dove into the issue queue after being absent from the issue queue, at least for several months, hardly doing anything. So I'm trying to push a few issues forward, and I'm excited about this. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Sarashri?
Yeah, my name is Sarva Shri. I'm in Walnut Cove, North Carolina, and I'm looking at design from the standpoint of beginners and how they could improve learning of Backdrop with better design. So better user interface and all that.
So, Sarashri, I don't know, maybe next week when you and I talk, I could show you, I think you might not know how to be helpful at this stage in the release cycle. And one of the things you could be doing if you're interested is there are a lot of sort of design issues in the issue queue that are tagged, and we have sandboxes that are all set up, and you can just go in, find the issues that are design related, go in and look at them and offer your feedback. And that's really valuable. You don't have to write any code or anything like that. You just got to go in.
That sounds good. I can do some of that.
And I can show you how we do that later if you want. Sorry, Jen, you want to go ahead?
Nope. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know. Should we just go down issues from the queue? Oh, Greg's excited. Do you want to start with yours, Greg?
Well, I don't have mine. I have there's a, as I said before the recording, I filtered the list by design label, and it shows me 81 tickets here. So there's plenty to pick from. There's a couple of ones I'm going to pick them randomly as they come up in the queue. So
I have one in specific, if it's okay.
Sure. You go ahead.
If you're just going randomly from the queue, I have one that I'm actually.
No, you go ahead, because I suspect it's going to be the one that I wanted to mention now, the pageless node thing.
No, actually, it's not. That's the more. I want to start with an easier one.
Okay.
Easier not to necessarily get done, but to get a clarification. Jen, this is and I'm going to specifically talk to you because I need your input. It's 4113. This is the better position for default breadcrumbs.
Okay.
And I'm just bringing this up because in theory, this could be a really easy one, but you've raised some concerns. And
yeah.
I just, basically
Go ahead.
I was just going to quickly summarize where it's been left off, right? Is that my current pull request just in the default, in the install profile, basically disables that or enables the page title block and then moves the breadcrumbs above it. And you have raised some concerns about enabling the page title block. And one, I just don't know how not to do that and still solve this. One of your things was to do, also, you had suggested that we do this, I think, in basis instead of in the install profile, but I don't know how to do that without backward compatibility issues.
Yeah.
And also, I'm not sure why it's a problem to to enable that page title block, because again, it seems to me that that's a more backgroundy way to do it anyways. Or if you had a better objection to that, like why that's a bad thing.
Yeah, I'm not sure I have a better objection. I saw your comment recently and I was like, oh, I should go look at that again and see if I think differently about it now than I did the last time I had an objection. I think at the time, what I was thinking is that we don't want to put too many blocks on the page, because then every time you like clone a layout, there's just more to do. But the page title is also something that is really confusing to people because it's not a block by default. And if we were to make it one, it would, I think, be more intuitive for people. But there's a bunch of other stuff. So I ran into this problem recently with someone who was new to layouts, where they overrode the page title, but then like they couldn't figure out where the messages and the breadcrumbs were coming from, because all of that is sort of done by default. And then if you place the like combo block, you get all of them. And if you don't place the combo block, you don't get all of them. And there's still some confusion around that. I mean, I think that if all we wanted to do was place the breadcrumbs block, I think we have that example in core already. I think it might even be in the default template. Like there's some stuff that I think makes sense by itself. So I need to look at it again to see what it looks like in the pull request I was recommended, to see if I still have an objection to it. I just know that that's something that's confusing to people. I don't know if we're making it like more intuitive. Greg, you might have thoughts on this too. Like even if it's more work, if it's more intuitive, that might still be better. So
I'm sure that I would have thoughts, but this specific issue is the one. See how GitHub has this blue mark when you have unread comments? And I know that I haven't touched that issue for quite some time. So there's a lot of catching up to do, and I'm already in the middle of a lot of things. So the summary is that I need the same as you said. I have to take a closer look. I wasn't prepared for this, but I appreciate the feedback. I don't think that the concerns that you raise are any different from the ones that have been raised initially, and also the technical challenges that Tim mentioned. I'll have to have a think and chime in. I promise to do that over the weekend. Yeah.
I think that my original thought was like, oh, rather than doing this in configuration, we should just do it in code. But Tim, you're exactly right that I don't think that's possible without with backwards compatibility, or at least it would be really messy if we did it that way. Like there would have to be some kind of theme setting or something that would be like override my block placement or whatever, or some layout setting. I don't know. And I think that I'm not sure that belongs in core, the fancy overridey thing. So I don't know. I feel like my personal preference would be, let's wait until backdrop 2 and move everything around into the right place in the template. But there isn't anything that says we can't set the block now and then move everything around in the template in backdrop 2 and remove it then. So yeah, I need to look at it again and see if I still actually have objections to it, or if I've come around on just placing the title block if he does it.
I have 2 comments to make, one related to this issue and then the other one more broadly. My pet peeve all the time, and I would be very interested to get input from the Grace Hopper guys that I will be working in accessibility. But maybe this is a personal preference, but when I think of breadcrumbs, I always, unless the final crumb is the page title, which some people have a preference to not include, I always make a mental image of where I am at by having the breadcrumb at the top and then the page title. And some people prefer the page title and then the breadcrumb underneath the title. So I think that this is a bit backwards if you are reading the page from top to bottom. It's sort of like first see where you are and then it takes you back to the breadcrumb, which starts from the sort of like top of the hierarchy of the page. I don't know, it just seems backwards to me, but as I said, might be a bit personal preference thingy.
I can speak to the accessibility of that. And I do know that in breadcrumbs, it is best to include the page title at the end. And even if it's not visually there, they still like to have it in like screen reader only mode, so that when you're navigating a page not visually, you can tell that those pages are the parent of the page you're on. So I don't know if that necessarily affects the position of breadcrumbs above title or not, because if the title's in the breadcrumbs, it may be less of an issue. But I do see your point about if you're not going to have the title in the breadcrumbs, you should have the title immediately following the breadcrumbs, and then it'll read the same way.
Yeah, and when it comes to screen readers, we can specify the tab index. So if they expect that the breadcrumb on top and then the title, and we have it the opposite way, we can just mess with a tab index, and then it will sort of like take them in the right order. But I would prefer if the tab index and the actual order were the same.
Yeah, in the recent testing that I've seen, the tab index seems to not be an issue anymore, because most people will choose to navigate by heading level or by like navigation structure, or they'll look for something specific on the page rather than relying the page to take you in the order that it wants to take you in anyway, just because it's much slower if you go through every element on the page than if you're after specific things. But
fair enough. And then the other, sorry, I have a dog barking at the background. So the other one was the more broadly, and I'll just drop it on the floor and then I think it's one of Tim's favorite. So Tim started a new issue because that was brought up about Backdrop 2.0. He's smiling already. So we've been struggling with how we make changes that are breaking when it comes to themes, layouts, and we just sort of like a theme suggested that we create a new theme. Discuss while I try to calm the dog.
Don't worry about the dog. Okay. Well, I just opened an issue that if we're not going to figure out a way to, if we can't figure out a way to make CSS changes to basis, that, to me, then the next best option would be to add a new theme, and that could possibly become the default theme. And there are a few different strategies to take. So I opened an issue to begin discussion on it. But I think we don't want to get too bogged down in that today, because that's not going to happen in the next week. So we should focus today on things that could happen in the next week.
Another thought, what we could do is take basis and put it in contrib and fix it all there. And then when Backdrop 2 comes out, we take the contrib version and put it in core. And that way, we like every change we'd be making to the theme would be future. It would be, it would be there in the future. We wouldn't have to do it again. So I don't know. This, of course, assumes we're happy with the basis. Like it might, WordPress comes out with a brand new theme for every new version, and maybe it would be better to put in like an experimental version of something totally different. So I don't know. But yeah, just had a thought. So I'd say it out loud.
Yeah. I also want to say
from commenting on it because it's not urgent. But go ahead.
No, what I wanted to say is that, of course, we cannot get this done by the feature freeze, as you mentioned, Tim. It's just that because Jen mentioned yet another time that, we can do this in 2.x, and this sort of like often seems way too far ahead in time. I just thought that, maybe for another discussion, but yeah, I thought it was relevant, not to solve in this meeting though.
Yeah. Okay. Well, on the breadcrumb issue, I think the status is that Greg and Jen and anybody else who wants to can take a look at it. I think for me, it's sort of my last push on this, and if it just doesn't go anywhere, I probably won't worry about it anymore. But I thought I'd see one more time if we could resolve it. Let's move on to something else, though. And Greg, if you want to move on to that hidden node thing, that could be an interesting one.
It's not my favorite on the ones that I've been working on, but it's at the top of the list. It comes as the most recently updated. It's issue 4849, in which we're trying to add a pageless node above the promoted content block on homepage, and there's sort of like a related issue to that, which I'm not sure it's typed as design. Bear with me. Which one is the other issue? I'm lost now.
So, well, really quickly, the history for this is that how this issue came about was there's this other issue about the problem with the path for the homepage and how that gets changed. And as we were talking about that, it occurred to us that a lot of people think they need to change the homepage path and they don't. So a proposal was raised to replace the promoted content block with just a static content block or an existing node block on the front page to better help people understand how the homepage works. And then that evolved into, well, if we're going to do that, we have this idea about adding a new content type for pathless nodes. And we should add, if that became a new issue. And so that was sort of the chain that got us here, although each of these could be independent, right? The pathless nodes are not dependent on replacing the promoted content block, but it sort of came about as that discussion.
Yeah, I see both of these issues as related. The other one is 4903, provide a new hidden bypass content type out of the box. There's a few ideas that came up that I haven't fleshed out completely, but I sort of I would like us to explore them. Could it be Doc Wilmot mentioned, I can't remember who it was, that now that we are getting closer with recipes, maybe that could be a recipe instead of a core thing. Although I would still we have this feature in core, which is really cool and people should start using it, but it's not obvious to people without having a use case. We had some discussion. We sort of decided to quickly sort of for the purposes of putting something together, something tangible together, we decided to go with a promo box. But once I saw that implemented, my first thought, and I saw the homepage with that there, my first thought was that we have two very similar ways of presenting content. So I think that it's mostly going to confuse newcomers rather than, so they're going to say, wait a minute, this visually looks the same. Why should I be doing it this way and not that way? I mean, why should I have it pageless or not? So I wanted us to pursue something that is I do want it to be on the front page, on the home page, but I want it to be visually different from the view. And I want it to be something that fits nice into the pageless nodes sort of example, it's a good use case that people understand immediately. So yeah.
So I was looking at all the activity on that issue recently, and I think all of the ideas we have in there are good ideas. And so maybe we need to figure out what our priorities are. If we want to find a feature that's good for 120, then I think promo box is the way to go, because that isn't going to require a decision about a JavaScript library or whether we want accordions on the homepage or any of the other complexities that come from that. The one downside that I thought about this morning when we were talking about promo box is that people without any context aren't going to know immediately what a promo box is, where some of the other things like FAQ, everyone knows what an FAQ is. Even if they don't want one on their own website, they'll understand that immediately. Or even a slide in a slideshow, I think is a little bit more intuitive than a promo box. That said, once you know what a promo box is, it's really useful, right? I just installed or removed a module called image block that someone had put on a backdrop site. And I'm like, you can do this with a pageless node. And they just didn't know that was a thing, right? Because in Drupal, you installed a module to put an image on a block. Now you're like, we can do blocks out of nodes. I don't know. It's something that I think if we had a good example for, people might want to use more. So I know we have a pull request from promo box. Does anyone have strong feelings about moving that forward? I mean, Greg, I know that it's confusing to have multiple things on the homepage, but I think if there's one of them is a view and one of them is a block, and the block doesn't have any links and the view does have links, that should be a pretty clear differentiator between the two. I think with slides, it's a little bit more ambiguous because now you've got more than one item in that area, whereas, you've got a view with multiple items, two views with multiple items, they're more similar. But I think it's a good idea. It's a good feature.
If we go, so first of all, I expressed these concerns multiple times on that issue. If we go with a slider, which is, it provides a lot of value out of the box, we need a JavaScript library. And then how do we pick one that is accessible, that is popular, that people can use? And how does Contrib override it if they want to use another library? So you get into this whole mess and the maintenance that we add in core. So it's a bit of a hairy situation. And then if you add on top of that, we have the project browser, so people can install a slider. So it's sort of like, I don't want the overhead. I was refraining from doing that. What I'm going to do is I'll let other people chime in. Just one final thought. If we go with a promo box, I would like us to go with something that is visually different. I was refraining these days from posting a screenshot. So what I'm going to do while you guys discuss is I'm going to take a screenshot of the default out-of-the-box GovCMS theme and the homepage that it has. And it has a series of boxes that are horizontally aligned instead of vertically, which is what we have now with a feed. Maybe if we style them different, it would differentiate them from the other thing. And the reason why I haven't posted it so far is that the way that it's presented, these are not a good fit for, they're visually a good fit, but they're not a good fit for a pageless thing, because they are things that you can actually click and they take you to places. So I'll post the screenshot on the issue so that people can see what I mean when I say visually distinct, or what I mean. But yeah, happy to discuss. Happy to go with promo box. But yeah.
Well, I just want to raise the visually distinct bumps us into the problem of updating basis. Although it might not be a problem if it's something new. If we're not retheming something that's already there, then it might be possible. But that, one of my concerns, part of the original replacing the promoted content was because it was simple and it didn't require like a lot of CSS. It's like we're taking one thing off, we're putting another on, and boom, it's done. And then the next idea was, well, hey, let's have that and the promoted content. And I just am kind of stuck on how to do that and make it look good. Now, Olaf has said he has some ideas, and he hasn't elaborated on those yet. So I'm anxious to see what Olaf's ideas are to help make that look good. And Gregory, no objection to the idea of adding something that's visually distinct, but I don't want that without some ideas on how to do it.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So if you look at the last comment on the ticket 4849 is the screenshot that you provided, Tim. It's the screenshot of the homepage as you provided it. And
sure.
From an outsider point of view, I don't see any difference between the section that is the block, your homepage block, and the section below. It's just a waterfall of text, which could have been page. Yeah. Whereas if
I don't like that. That's my point. My point is, yes, people asked for these two things on the front page. Here's what it looks like. It's ugly. What do we do with it?
Yes, exactly. So how about if you look now in issue 4903, I posted a screenshot. Sorry, I didn't have time to crop it to the section that I wanted. It's the screenshot of the homepage of GovCMS, right? So it has all the basic elements that we have in Basis, which is the header with the menus and then the big hero box. But then it has a set of horizontally aligned boxes. So if we did something like that, we had multiple promo boxes. And so it's sort of like a slider, but not a slider. It's a series of slides if you want to sort of like put it in the paradigm of the slider. But I don't know if that's a good fit. It's just an idea. What I like about this is that it's visually different from the rest of the elements in the page. Or if you had a different background color, like the green ribbon that sits above that, those boxes in that, I want it to be different. I want people to understand that this is something different than the rest of the text on the page.
I think there's two ways we can do it. I love this idea, Greg, of doing something horizontally. I also think this solves a problem of how do you put more than one thing on the homepage. So if it's one promo box and then one column of articles, they do get really similar. But if you split them into three, our current layout is a one column layout. We could do that with a views grid and drop in. It could be three, it could be whatever, that was 6 or however many was on your example page. 2, I don't know. more than one, right? It'll look visually different. That horizontal bar for the where the views grid goes gives us something to put color on. If we wanted to add another color background in there, we could. I think it gives us a lot more options. I think it gives us, ability to, provide a feature that other people could override too. I think if I were to build the page, I would do it with a layout with 3 regions. But because we're adding it to core and we already have a one-page layout, this gives us a workaround for that, which I think is also good. I think, Tim, that adding CSS for something new is going to be much easier. We could target the view, we could target the node type. All of that stuff isn't in core yet. So I think it would be safe to add to basis.
Yep.
And yeah, I think this gives us a path forward. The only question, and we can fix this after code freeze if we need to, is if we need to add any special language around, like, are we happy with the name promo box? Do we need a description on it that's going to explain what that is? And of course, naming things is the hardest. But I do think that, we can start with what we have and get something to like a RTBC status and worry about adding more description text later if we need it.
Yeah. So yeah, we can discuss if people decide to sprint, we can discuss this further and maybe we'll bake something before feature freeze. But yeah, that was my main concern. Otherwise, I like the idea of the promo box in the sense that we don't have to depend in JavaScript or whatever. I just want it to be distinct, as I said. That's it.
Gregory, can you say the issue number again for the
issue number is 4903. 4903. And then to compare it to the screenshot that other people sort of like requested team to implement things as, the other issue is 4849. So compare the last screenshots on those 2 issues and you'll see what I'm talking about.
48.
4849.
I think we're right.
That
That probably we've gotten as far as we can. I mean, this has been a useful discussion, and talking about it on Saturday or over the weekend will be good. So I think we could move on, although I think we should at least acknowledge because Doc Wilmot is here, the concern he raised and get some quick feedback on that. Joseph might also have thoughts on the issue of tests. So what are the testing implications for adding a new content type? Joseph, did you see the discussion about this?
No. I'm assuming that the point of this is to show people how to add things with using config as a module. Basically, no. This
is not a config recipe thing. This is just a separate issue about adding a new content type to core, which will help illustrate some features. But Doc Wilmot, which Doc, feel free to chime in, raised the concern that if we add a content type, that there might be a huge overhead in terms of additional tests that need to be written. And we're not sure if that's really true or not. And I'm just wondering if you have any opinions in adding a content type, what the implications are for testing.
I think this would be enabled by default on new sites.
Yes. Standard install profile.
I don't think it would be huge. I guess it depends on how much how much custom functionality there is tied in this thing. If you have
really none.
Okay. If it's just all the existing node behaviors, then we probably are already testing that, and we would probably just need one test or modify one test to make sure that it gets set up right in the install profile.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking too. Like, we already have tests for pageless nodes, and that's the thing that makes this different from our other 2 content types. And all of the other features on content types, asterisk all, should already be tested. And so in theory, any number of content types would already be covered by the existing tests. But I would envision us adding a test that would make sure that the pageless node appeared on the homepage or on the homepage in the view, so that we'd also be testing the node, the view, and the placement and the layout sort of in one fell swoop. And that way we make sure the feature we're adding doesn't get broken in the future by anything else. But I don't think we need to retest anything about nodes or about pageless nodes or about node types or about field UI or all the other stuff that's in there just because it's a new node type. I think it should be covered. Doug Beaumont pointed out, though, that there's a bunch of places in core where we run one test against both existing node types. And it could be useful to update some of those to include, okay, well, let's run this test against all three instead of two. But I don't think we have to update all of them. I think if we wanted to update some of them, we could. But I don't think it's going to be a huge amount. I don't think it's necessary. And I don't think it's going to be a huge amount of work, even if we did want to change some of those to make sure that we could repeat those tests on a new node type.
Yeah, and
Right.
I think that we could also iterate. So we can grab the ones that we find on the first pass, and then if we find more and we want to add them, we just add them sequentially or eventually somewhere. I'm not sure if Andy has his mic on or if he can. Andy, can you hear us?
Are these tests?
Yeah, I'm here. Go ahead,
hi.
Joseph.
Are these tests related to the standard install profile, or are these like other things like tags tests or?
Okay, so just to jump in here, I wasn't specifically speaking about adding tests for this function. And to be honest, my concern was, it's not really a concern. I'm just flagging that if we're going to be adding a new content type, that we should make sure at least we discuss this part, which is what we're doing now, which is good. That, you know, in code, if for future we're going to be doing anything in Backdrop, most of what we do has to do with nodes. So if we add another content type, instead of thinking of only 2 types of nodes, we're now going to have to be thinking about 3 types of nodes. So that would increase our, just the amount of thinking you have to do, both now in the existing code and any code in the future that you have anything to do with nodes. So that would increase our workload a little bit. And that's something that I think we should just make sure we consider for the future. That's all. It might be that I am completely, you know, exaggerating, and it'll have a little impact. But I think, you know, even a little for a small team, we have to be sure that the benefit that we get out of this is worth the even a little bit of increase in work that is necessary now and in the future. That's my point.
Yep. No, it was a legitimate concern, but I just don't think that we have to change all tests to account for all content types, or that we have to do it with this change. We can do it in the future, like we can make sure that all of them are there. It will add some, I guess, execution time to the tests, depending on how many we're writing. But yeah, I think that also we need to address, I'm trying to find who mentioned it, that couldn't that be implemented as a recipe? And to my understanding, it could, once we get those working as expected, because it's basically configuration. But I'm not sure if the rest of it, like the placement, could be possible, like to put it in a specific layout could be, but you have to be, you would have to figure out some logic. But then styles or themes, do recipes now allow you to include CSS or things like that?
Well,
So what
I
we,
don't think so.
that's another discussion. Laren brought this up, and I think he was like, worst case scenario, we could do this. But that doesn't, that doesn't address the reasons why we wanted to do this in the first place. The whole purpose for doing this in the first place was to have it there out of the box, right? So
Yes.
we've only got 10 minutes left in this meeting, and I'm wondering if there seems to be some momentum here and some next steps, and if we should see if there's any other issues. And I'll just say I sort of resurrected this issue partly because it's sort of a splashy issue. It's not like functionally critical to Backdrop, but I feel like it would have an impact and really show, I don't know, just be a visible change when people open up the next issue of, or the new release of Backdrop, they'll see something different. And to me, that has marketing value. Are there any other issues that we can talk about today that like be good marketing or good or just important to get into? Go ahead.
So one more
Oh,
thing
go ahead.
before we move on, just in relation to tests. I personally don't think we should have any tests that depend on the default content types, except maybe the standard profile test. Because if we have a feature that breaks if you delete the page content type, then that feature is broken. So
Yeah, I
then,
see what you're saying.
and then the other thing is that if we do depend on those default content types, then we by implication depend on the standard install profile. And one of the things I've been working on to make our test framework faster is converting all the tests to use the test profile, which installs very few modules by default.
And create content types as needed for
Right.
the specific test that needed. Yeah, it makes sense actually.
Yeah. So like for file handling, we don't really need a content type, so we would just ignore that.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, you make a good point. Can I be selfish now? More selfish than usual, I say. So the other thing that I would like to discuss is issue 5090, so 5090, which is the details, replacing the more or less toggle with details. We're really close with that. I think that the only task that's left there is adding the polyfill for other browsers. And related issues is there's a few issues in the queue with updating outdated icons, the sorting icons, the structure icon. I'm not sure if these are features or are tagged as features or tasks, but I would like to see them get in at some point. These are the things that come off the top of my head, and I'll leave some time for the rest of the people to another 5 minutes to bring their favorite issues.
Gregory, so what needs to happen on this issue? Are you looking for feedback? Do you just need more input? What do we need?
I need to know that that it's up to standards and that no one has any other objections, because what really remains is to make sure that we support older browsers, which is sort of like it is a task. It needs to get done and tested, but I need to know before I start doing that, I need to know that the feature as is now is ready if you disregard that fact that it won't work without a polyfill in all the browsers.
Okay.
I think that's a good one, Greg. I was really impressed when I saw your pull request with how little you changed and how it looked exactly the same afterwards. I don't think that's a task though. I think that has to be a new feature because it's going to need new tests, but I think that's okay because it's rather minor and I think we do have time to get it into 120.
Yeah, and if it needs tests, I'm going to need help with tests. And one of the things that I missed during my hiatus was the discussion in the virtual user group about tests. So I didn't get any better during that time. So yeah, I might need help. Did I say might? I will need help.
Okay.
So yeah, Zen, do you have any favorite design or UX issues? How about we have the flexi.
Yeah, I think that's a bug. Oh, wait, no, the user interface.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's updates. Yeah, that's a good one.
I'll try to find it.
I think
That's
I have
another, well, it's a visible change for those who get to flexible templates.
Yes.
I really like this one. Yeah. Although, I recommend people look at it, but there's really nothing like that needs to happen, is there?
Oh boy.
I'm kind of in a good place with it, I think.
I think so too. Greg, I just saw your follow-up for draggable handles. That looks exciting. The issue for style.
We don't have time. We don't have time.
No. It looks exciting. The style consistency issue is 5149. Essentially, when flexible templates went in, it was so excited. Everybody was like, "It's great, get it in." But we didn't really do a lot of design comparisons between other pages, which is fine. It was a great feature. So all this pull request does is take this CSS from the manage blocks page and apply some of the same elements to the manage flexible layout page. So it's got draggable icons in the header row and I don't know, like a visual indicator of the row itself, so that when you pick it up, you can see where, like, which element it is. I don't know. It's cleaner, I guess. But yeah, thank you. I don't know how many people were helping me iterate on that. There was like 6 or 7 people helping with feedback on that. And I was just like, I don't know what to do. I'm just going to try things that are completely different. And you tell me if you like them or not. So that was really useful.
Well, I think it's fair to say that the status of that is there seems to be general agreement, right? And there isn't really any blockers. It's people have a last chance to give it feedback, right? But
Yeah, it's currently both needs code review and needs testing. So if anyone hasn't seen it yet and wants to take it for a drive in the sandbox, it's ready.
One thing that is not a feature, but is a task, but it's I think it's sort of like blocking the rest of the things, is Peter's 3402, which is the standardized label and machine name for admin listings. We are so close with that. That's 3402.
Oh yeah, this is a good one. That one's really close too, isn't it?
It is really close. Like we need to iron out the last details, and then, which I'm not fussed about, honestly. I provided a screenshot with your recommendations, Jen. I'll speak to Peter later and I'll see if he has time to work on Backdrop. Otherwise, I'll just file a pull request on top of his, just to fix it, because it's basically 2 lines of code.
Okay. I dropped a link to that one into the agenda too, if anyone is working on that, wants to see it. Well,
a lot of talk about that today. Okay, go ahead.
it's 2 p. It's the end of the hour, various hours depending on where we are.
Yeah.
Which means it's time for Jeff meeting. I know this meeting has become not only about design, but about all of the stuff we're excited about for 120, which I think is still valid. But maybe we should stop the recording and start the one for the weekly meeting.
Sure.
Yeah, and close by saying that a lot of us plan to sprint over the weekend or the days before the 1st. So the best, I guess, place to align on that is Zulip. And if anyone is around and is sprinting, just let us know so we can jump in, those of us that have time.
Yep.
Can I just say one thing?
Yep.
A little late. Sorry.
Yes.
No, we've had a bit of talk about exposing functionality to new users. I was just looking through the contrib modules, and 7 years ago, I ported Drupal's Tor module. I think there was a plan at some point for Drupal to include Tor module, if you remember. I don't think that went ahead. But I'm wondering if that might be something that we should look at again, so we could provide some sort of automatic Tor for a Backdrop for your users.
Tor module is in Drupal core, and it has failed in its original intent.
That's what
and I think that part.
No, I don't mean have it in core. I mean just to have it available that you can recommend to new users, and then we can contribute to it, in contrib.
I like the idea. I don't think that it was ever officially shut down. It was either lack of time or we just didn't get to it. Everybody loved the idea, like the fact that because a lot of software uses it out there. But if we could find a way to decouple the content from the feature so that we can update the content because it's translated strings as well and things like that. If we could find something like the localization server that would pull the core tours and we could independently update those, or if people think that that's a good idea, then it could get in. And it's not something that we would use only in core. Even contrib could use that to provide tours for their UI.
Yeah, I think the reason it wasn't as successful in Drupal core is because in order to do a really good tour, it takes a lot of content on whatever thing you're trying to do a tour on, and content is what's hardest for developers to produce. I also think that that will be something that's perfectly suited for Kintrib, because then we can get fewer people that have to be core developers to work on it. I love this idea, Greg, of having like a central content repository that's not in the module itself. I don't know how we can make that happen, but I feel like it's possible.
It seems to me that it could be documentation, like, because that's what it is. We just need to tie the bits of documentation with specific bits in the UI and tell it where to position the bubbles that show up in the steps.
I also think that this is something that could be really useful on our sandboxes on the try demo button, even if it doesn't end up in core, putting it something that will be front and center for people who are testing Backdrop could be really useful too. So I'd love to see some progress on that somehow.
Should we go ahead and end this meeting?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Thanks, Amy.
Thanks everyone.
These discussions will probably bleed into the next one. Bye, everybody.